This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, everybody. There's still a few people joining, but I think because there's quite a lot of us on the line, I think we'll start with introductions. I'm John Coonrod at the
tools that they're.
Hi, this is John Coonrod with the Hunger Project in our Washington office, and I'm going to call on people to, if you would please, unmute yourself and introduce yourself when I call on you. So first, Andrea Findley.
Hi, good morning. This is Andrea Findley. I'm out in Portland, Oregon. I work with Ascension Global Mission. We support community-led development through a faith-based initiative in Guatemala.
Great, thanks, Andrea. And Ann Hendricks Jenkins.
Hi, everyone. Good to see your initials at least. Ann Hendricks Jenkins. I'm with the Movement for Community-Led Development, and I am now based out of Jerusalem, so I'm calling from Jerusalem.
Great. Anna?
I'm assuming it's me. I'm Anna Slattery, and I work in communications at the Hunger Project.
Great, thanks. Annette?
Hi, everyone. Annette Scarpita. I'm kind of a mix. I'm representing Mavuno, a Congolese organization, as well as myself as a consultant. I'm really eager to get involved. I had some communications issues, but I'd really like to hook up with folks in Africa. I've got a demonstrated model of community-led development in Congo that I'd like to share. So if folks can contact me, or if there's a way to get emails of people, that would be great. I am hooked up to the groups.
Great, that's super. We'll talk about how to do that in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
Arthur, if you can unmute and introduce yourself.
Right. 100. It's coming online. 532. Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes, Arthur, go ahead.
Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Arthur Nkosi. I'm the country director for Core Africa, Malawi, based in Malawi, Lilongwe, the capital city. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Arthur. Aya?
Hello, everyone. This is Aya. I'm an independent consultant. I'm based in Turkey, and I work currently in the MENA region. I'm really interested to know and to learn more about community-based development since I work in the MEAL. So maybe to learn how and communicate how we can implement some community-based approaches during the evaluations in particular. Nice to meet you all.
Wonderful, Aya. Thank you. Christina? You have to hover over the bottom of your screen and click on that little phone to unmute yourself. Consolata, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Consolata Norbert. I am the country director for the Mango Tree Orphan Support Trust Kenya. I started the organization, and we run a very community-based organization, and I'm very much passionate about community-led development. I'm calling from Kenya.
Wonderful, Consolata. Glad you could be with us. Dana.
Hi, I'm Dana Brown, and I'm a consultant, and right now working with USAID and supporting their self-reliance learning agenda, and particularly interested in how what you all are doing may inform their work to support more community-led development.
Wonderful. Diana?
Hi, everyone. This is Diana from the Hunger Project Mexico. Very glad to be here in our very first call of 2020.
Wonderful. Edwin John. Okay, Edwin's connected from India. If you could unmute yourself and say hello, that would be great. Otherwise,
yeah, I'm okay. Can you hear me?
Oh, good.
Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank you, Edwin.
Yeah, I am Edwin from India. I have been all along been in this community-led development. Our focus is on neighborhood-based, inclusive, community-led development.
Yep.
And recently we prepared something on people-led, community-led marketing. I would like to circulate the notes on that. Yeah, I am looking for a chance to circulate that with all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. And if you could mute yourself now, Edwin, we'll go on to Federico Mosca. Federico?
Hello, my name is Federico Mosca. Apologies, I'm in a car driving, so I'm here with Fieldworks, an organization to support locally led development initiatives.
Okay, well, great to hear you, and drive carefully. Gail Snetro.
Hello, John and others. This is Gail Snetro. I'm with Save the Children as a senior advisor for community and social change. Apologies for not being as engaged as I wanted to last year. I've been in a transition from 30 years with our Department of Global Health and transferring a number of my responsibilities on large USAID projects over to our sponsorship programs. Where we are implementing in 17 countries with 21 impact areas and deepening our theory of change around community-led development and integrated community programming. So very happy to be back with the group.
Yay, Gail. Great to hear from you. Welcome back. Gunjan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gunjan. I'm with the Movement for Community-Led Development, particularly working on the collaborative meta-synthesis, and I'm based out of India.
Great. Okay. Somebody called HP. I guess that's my Hunger Project office somewhere.
Hi, everyone. This is Pascal.
Hi, Pascal.
Yeah, hi, John.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Pascal Johosu from the Hunger Project.
Right.
And yes, I'm calling from the Community-Led Development Coordination for West Africa, and I'm based in Cotonou. Hi,
wonderful.
Everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. Ingi Akush. Hello, Ingi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, well, feel free to, if you get yourself unmuted, to speak up. Isabel. Isabel?
Hi, my name is Isabel Clary. I'm an anthropologist, and I work in Haiti. I've taken the last 7 or 8 years, I've taken a very critical approach to multi and bilateral community-led development models, specifically looking at how not acknowledging power dynamics at the community level tend to skew outcomes of programs. I'm launching a research institute in Haiti called the Haiti Impact Group that's going to be looking to do applied research and policy change inside of development.
That's wonderful to hear from you, Isabel. Jenna?
Hi, I'm Jenna Rakuber. I work in fundraising and communications at the Hunger Project.
Thanks, Jenna. Jordan Teague?
Hi, this is Jordan Teague. I work with Bread for the World Institute. We're a faith-based grassroots advocacy group doing anti-hunger work based in Washington, D.C., but we have a focus on both domestic and global hunger.
Great, Jordan. Thank you. Jude? Jude? Okay, Leni.
Hello, everybody. This is Leni from the Hunger Project in Germany. I'm the country director. Nice to be on this call. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Leni. Liana?
Hi, everyone. I'm Liana Tabor, Director of Programs at WEMA International, and I'm calling from our Cambridge, Massachusetts office.
Great, Liana. Marissa?
Hello, John, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marisa. I'm with the Hunger Project, and I'm based in Zambia.
Wonderful. Matt.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Lanilla from Newer International and also co-chair of the Learning Working Group with Sia Nawarji. So, pleasure to be with you all today.
Great. Thank you. Natalie?
Hi, everyone. This is Natalie Elwell. I lead the Gender and Social Equity Initiative at World Resources Institute. Glad to be here.
Great. Thank you. Roland?
Hello, everyone. I'm Rollins. I'm working as the Global Vice President for Program Strategy, as well as Southern Africa Regional Director for CLD with the Hunger Project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Roland. Sia?
Hi, everyone. This is Sia Navrochi. I'm the program director at the 3D program for girls and women. We are implementing multi-sectoral convergent solutions to improve outcomes for girls and women in Maharashtra, India, and hoping to work in East Africa in our next phase. I'm also really pleased, as Matt said, to be the co-chair of the Learning Working Group of the movement.
Great. Thank you, Sia. Sorry you're not here in person. You're missing the treats.
I know, me too.
Sylvia.
Hello, everyone. This is Silvia from THP Mexico, and I am the coordinator for Alliances for Local Advocacy.
Great. Teresa, in Germany?
Hi, everyone. This is Teresa, and I sort of recently joined THP Germany.
Wonderful. Glad you're with us. Tori?
Hi, this is Tori, joining from the programs team based in New York with the Hunger Project.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Verena from Netherlands.
From Germany.
Oh, from Germany. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Our headquarters is in the Netherlands, but I'm based in Munich. I'm working for WECF, Women Engaged for a Common Future. I'm the water and sanitation coordinator, so we mainly have projects in Africa and the Balkan region. And yeah, so our focus is already on implementing projects on a community level with local experts, and I'm very looking forward to learn how I can improve our work there. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Verena. Thank you. And Zerihun?
Hi, everyone. This is Zarihul Lama. I'm a country director of International Institute of Rural Reconstruction, IIRR, in Ethiopia. We are implementing community-led, community-driven programs since our inception some 60 years ago. So I'm happy to be part of this meeting.
Great, Zerihun. I had a wonderful conversation with your president a week or so ago, and glad that you're with us. IIRR, for those of you who don't know, is really the grandfather organization of all community-led development. So we're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to give just a slight introduction. Here's our agenda. Here in the room with us today, we have our special guests, Grace Boone and David Yamran, who will be speaking in just a minute. The rest of you want to introduce yourselves quickly here?
I'm John Hoven, Fast Feedback Learning.
Claire Lorenzetti, just THP intern.
Matthew Boltansky, THP intern.
Mary Kay Costello, the Hunger Project.
Okay, so let me just welcome to 2020. Several people mentioned this is our first call of this very important year. On our last call, we declared that this would be a year of co-creation, that we needed to really co-create goals in each working group in each country, and we needed to really start sitting down with government systems and co-create a future of community-led development for everyone, because this is a fundamental human right for people to have the voice and as Mahatma Gandhi says, control over their own lives and destiny. This is a major review year for the Sustainable Development Goals. It's Beijing plus 25 year. It's replenishments of two of the big multilateral funds that often support community level activities. Lots of organizations are wrapping up their first 5-year plans after the launch of the SDGs and doing their next 5-year plans. So this year has particular meaning in our movement. I really want to thank everyone that has subscribed or sent people to subscribe to our groups.io system. You do this just on the subscribe page on our website, communityleddev.org. This gives us a little metric for how we're doing as mobilizing actual active participants. As you see here, all the country or regional subgroups to our main group. Our main group for the monthly announcements has grown rapidly in the last 3 weeks by 20%. But look at Zambia. Marissa, you have really scored here, going from 9 to 45 subscribers in your group. You have the biggest country group currently, but this is an ad for the rest of us to catch up. And if your country doesn't have a group, let me know and we'll create one, subgroup. The working groups also have grown, particularly the evaluation group has grown from 15 to 40 in the last 3 weeks, which is quite a jump. And we're going to be talking after the main presentation, particularly about the communications working group, an update on the metasynthesis, and this new humanitarian development nexus working group. So I'm going to have to switch PowerPoints here. Let's see if I stop doing the screen.
John, just a reminder that I'll have to go at 10:40 for the Michelle Becker meeting. So my updates.
Yep. Okay, so success. Okay, and go here, hit share my screen. Sorry, I have to talk to myself as I push buttons. Okay, you should now, or in a moment, be seeing a slide that says stopping as success. And I'm going to pass the computer to our special guests, this picture you saw, Grace and David, to do this presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to move it. I'm a little soft-spoken, so thank you. Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm Grace, and with me is David Yamron from Search.
Hi, everybody. Search for Common Ground.
Louder. Talk louder.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Just
transform the world.
All right. Hope everybody can hear me. Hi to those in the room as well. So today David and I will be sharing about our Stopping as Success project, which is a piece of the community-led development pie, because we are learning how, for the past 3 years, we've been learning how what ingredients make up responsible INGO aid transitions, and then how can we use what we're learning to influence the development sector at large. So we're excited to share a little bit about that with you all. Before we get started, we did want to take a minute to explain what we mean by the term local. We realize that it can be a problematic term when it's used in different ways, and so for us it's really important to define it before we jump into what we mean by that. So for us, in our project's context, local means actors or organizations who work in the Global South, who work at the national or local level, and that could include communities, newly created non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, NGOs that have devolved from an international federation, or local and national governments. So keep that in mind as we say that word throughout our presentation. Great. So with that being said, what is Stopping as Success? So we, as I said, are a 3-year learning project funded by USAID, and we have been studying responsible aid transitions in 13 different countries. As a way of learning about this, we've been using a case study methodology. So we've conducted 20 case studies across 13 countries, and we've chosen to look at cases where the new local entity, the transitioning entity, has defined that transition as successful or responsible. And the reason that we chose to take this positive deviance approach is because we assume that it's more normal for us in the development and aid sector to know when transitioning from an INGO to a local entity didn't go well. And so we're trying to learn what ingredients make up a responsible, successful transition, and then what can we learn from that? And then how can we use that information and those lessons to then influence actors that are actively planning for or going through transitions. So these case studies serve as our evidence base. And we are actually today, which is very exciting, we plan to launch our new website as well as some of the tools and resources that we have been working on. We have created between 20, 25 resources that are specifically aimed at INGOs, NGOs, as well as donors. And we are, over the next month, going to be publishing those in thematic packages as a way to sort of ease this information out into the world and not dump 40 pieces of literature on people. So we're starting that this week, which is exciting. And for this webinar specifically, David and I will be sharing 2 key themes with you all, and then we'll also be showing the tools that have been produced in relation to those themes as a way to sort of ground what we mean by thematic packages and as a way to sort of synthesize our work in a couple minutes. So let's get started. The first theme that we wanted to share with you all is this idea of transformational partnerships. It really has been a cross-cutting theme for us. It hits in all of our case studies, throughout all of our meetings with global stakeholders. And so it's important, right? And it's hard to talk in a short amount of time, but the key things that have come up in relation to partnership, the first is power imbalances. We can't talk about partnerships without talking about power imbalances, especially how they show up in the aid sector. You know, someone who introduced themselves was mentioning how the power dynamics at a community level are really something important to focus on, and that is an aspect that we've seen show up a lot in our cases. One of the specific ways that power shows up in relation to transitions is how, with all of our case studies, the decision to transition happened at a headquarter level and was often motivated by financial reasons, right? So we see that the decision making, even in responsible cases, still sits with headquarter level. And of course, it shows up in a lot of different ways as well. The other part of this too is the importance of relationship building from the start. And in relation to this, one of our top lessons is how INGOs enter matter just as much as how they leave. We've seen cases where INGOs will spend 6 months to a year, 2 years, really getting to know the context, the people. In one case, in Timor-Leste specifically, there was a Timor co-director and a United States co-director, and they worked together from the beginning, right? And this sort of relationship building that goes into the beginning of programming really sustains itself, and you can see the impact that it makes at the end, which is really powerful. However, we do recognize that not all INGOs enter well, and that there are generational legacies of how INGOs enter contexts. And so because of that, we've created program cycle documents that hit at wherever you are in the program cycle, what can you be doing to actively support responsible transitions? Because it's something that we're really passionate about, of course. The next thing regarding partnership is how partnerships can continue beyond exits. The term exit actually doesn't resonate with a lot of folks that we've spoken to, because another one of our key lessons is how you sorry. One of our key lessons is, that transitions are as much as a beginning as they are an end. And that I'm thinking of a partnership specifically also in Timor-Leste, but a different partnership with Inner Peace. And the INGO years after continues to serve as what they call a silent partner. So they have a really informal MOU where they can serve to support the needs of the newly established local entity. The local entity can support the needs of the INGO. They have this really incredibly flexible, fluid partnership, which is helpful for both. The last thing on the slide that I'll talk about is this idea of mutual capacity strengthening. We acknowledge that we have evidence for the fact that INGOs learn and are developed and strengthened just as much as local entities and actors are by their engagement with one another. And so we're really interested about this idea of capacity strengthening being a two-way street. And so we've created a tool about how we've seen that play out and perhaps aspects of what that can mean. So the next slide just shows you some of the tools that we're thinking about. I'm not thinking about that, we've produced actually. And I'm not going to go through them just for time, but hopefully we can circulate the slide deck for you all to see it. But I'll hand it over to David. He'll be sharing about financial sustainability.
Sure, thanks a lot, Grace. So the second and final theme that we're going to be talking about today is financial sustainability. This refers specifically in the Stopping a Success context to the financial sustainability of a new local organization after they transition from an INGO. This is, of course, a critical topic when we're thinking about this idea of transitions. It's something that we heard echoed over and over again, both in our 20 case studies and in the regional consultations that we conducted over the past 2-ish years. So our research suggests that the steps that these three groups on the slide here, INGOs, local NGOs and CSOs, and donors, the steps that they take before, during, and after these transitions to ensure financial sustainability have a make or break effect on the future success of the transitioning entity. And it's really critical that significant planning and thought goes into these processes. So I can go through these three groups really quickly and talk about some of the specific findings that we have. So I'll start with INGOs. At a really high level, we found that INGOs that are intentional, proactive, and collaborative, so incorporating local voices into decision making with their transition planning are the ones that set up transitioning entities well for sustainability post-transition. So on a more concrete level, this means, first of all, planning for transitioning from the beginning. So when an INGO enters a country or begins a project, thinking about these things at startup. This includes things like creating a plan for capacity development in key strategic areas, beyond simply project skills, thinking about strategic planning, business development, financial management, things that a transitioning organization will need to be independent after a transition. It also means working collaboratively to identify and support local leaders and put them or work with them in a decision-making role rather than having expatriate staff dictate from above. It also means setting clear milestones over the course of a gradual transition, several years, to ensure that there's a sort of a stable and sustainable transition. One good example of this is our case study in Kenya with Nuru International. I know Matt Lineal's on the call here. Nuru did a particularly good job of this, which we profiled in our Nuru Kenya case study, which should be coming out in the next week or two, and I would encourage everybody to read it. The second thing I want to mention for INGOs is around asset transfer. So this, what we've seen in our case studies, this can often be more creative than simply like traditional grant support, just money. We've seen organizations use sort of creative asset transfer methodologies, like thinking about things like fixed assets, like office space or vehicles that can be really important for organizations that need to pay rent. Knowledge assets like KM databases or internal policies and procedures, just transferring those over can be a huge head start for a new local entity. As one quick example, in our Georgia case study, Oxfam provided the transitioning NGO Bridge with their entire Georgia proposal database, explaining that this was material originally gathered from the Global South, and it was only fair to return it upon transition. Let me turn to the second key group here, local NGOs and organizations. Our evidence suggests that successful local entities view this transition process as an opportunity for transformation, not just for a transition per se. The organizations that we work with often looked beyond sort of a traditional business model of grants funded by large institutional donors, in which they would more or less compete with those same INGOs, but on a sort of unequal playing field given the power dynamics that exist in the international development and aid spaces. The organizations that we've looked at have embraced a diverse array of funding models. We've seen social enterprises like Coffee for Peace in the Philippines, microcredit institutions like Partner in Bosnia, or NGOs with unrestricted funding that comes from a for-profit consulting wing otherwise in an NGO, as with Bridge in Georgia. A diverse funding stream is really key, and one thing that we found is that local fundraising streams, such as local or national government money or corporate social responsibility funds, can often be more sustainable and offer more opportunities for longer-term partnerships than donor funds, which are tied to specific projects and are often subject to the kind of aid volatility that's common in the Global South. I know I'm running out of time here, so I'll just jump to donors here. I think one thing that we found in our project is that there's a clear need for grant funding to support the core costs of transitions. These core costs are significant, cover human resources, legal fees, financial management, reporting, accounting, operations, planning. All of these things are deeply involved in transitions, and there's often very little funding available for it. We have seen some donors who have been really progressive in this area and have responded to these needs by offering core support grants. Like in our Plain India case study, the Finnish government provided a seed funding grant just to cover those core costs, which was hugely important for Plain India's future financial sustainability. I think I'll leave it there for now, but all of these issues and many more are contained in the tools and resources, which I'll talk about right now. So we've created an issue paper around financial sustainability, which sort of looks at those three different groups, INGOs, local NGOs and CSOs, and donors, and does a much broader cross-case analysis than the one I just did, explaining all the kinds of issues and key dynamics that we saw in the 20 case studies. We've also created a practical guidelines for financial sustainability document, which distills that learning into some like step-by-step processes and approaches that we found to be successful. We've also created a how-to access unrestricted funding document, which is a really great resource for transitioning local organizations. It gives some ideas about how to recover some of those significant overhead costs. So I think we'll leave it there. And if we have any time for questions.
We will. However, while you're digesting this presentation, I want to ask Mary Kate, who has to run to a meeting at USAID, to plug the communications working group, because I mean, everything you mentioned, a lot of it has to do with sharing and getting stuff known. So what would you like to say about the communications working group?
Regarding the communications working group, I wanted to give 2 updates on our participation at the UN in the coming months. And the first is that we are approved to host a side event in UN headquarters as part of the upcoming Commission on Social Development. And that event will be held on Wednesday, February 19th at 11:30 a.m. And we are still looking for a couple of panelists. Currently, it's the Hunger Project and Church World Service that are the co-sponsors of that event. And we would love other interested members of the movement or other relevant partners that you may have of UN agencies or UN missions to join us in that event. And it is titled, in accordance with the theme of this year's Commission on Social Development, it is titled Community Solving Homelessness, Building Local Capacity and Accountability. So essentially what we're looking to do is the Hunger Project and other speakers that work in similar development contexts would speak about how programming and particular engagement around community leadership helps people bring themselves out of homelessness by building particular skills and organizing themselves, And then humanitarian-focused organizations like Church World Service would look at the unique case of migrants and displacement and what they need for safe spaces and resettlement, as well as engaging communities in host countries. So that's the first one. And the second is we also got a parallel event approved for CSW. And that topic is titled, bear with me because this only came in recently. That event will be on Wednesday, March 18th in the Church Center of the United Nations, also co-sponsored with Church World Service. They tend to be a typical sister organization, so to speak, that moves to the humanitarian side of the organizations. And this event is, oh my gosh, sorry. We actually got a decent time slot for it as well, which was very useful. Sorry.
Well, maybe you can text it to me on your way to USAID, and you can.
I could do that, but it will be basically on, just so I can speak from memory, it's on the unique role of women's community leadership and social accountability toward achieving the goals set forth in the Beijing platform. This year, CSW looks at the Beijing platform specifically, and I will note that we're in intro conversations with Save the Children to work with us on that, and we will have program staff coming in from India and it looks like Africa, and we would welcome other orgs who also have folks coming in from the Global South. That would be ideal in engagement in these events. So those are our two big things in engaging the global CLD movement on the global stage at the two upcoming UN commissions.
Wonderful, thank you. And good luck with the gender boss at USAID.
We're going to chat to Michelle Beckering and see what CLD looks like in gender policy at USAID.
Great. Okay, so Grace and David are still here. If anyone has any questions, and you can ask them to flip back to earlier slides or whatever, you just unmute and ask the question. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, John. This is Arthur from Malawi.
Yes, go ahead, Arthur.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation so far. It's been great hearing a lot of the developments that have come in, and I'm very excited to have access to the tools, especially looking at financial sustainability and how to access restricted funding. I have a question specifically on the continued partnerships beyond exit. My interest is in the organization that I'm currently working with, Core Africa, where we have volunteers who are college graduates and live and work in the rural districts within Malawi. One of the areas that we are trying to work on and learn from is once a volunteer has worked in a community, just like the way Peace Corps, if most of you are familiar with Peace Corps, once they're in a community for a period of 12 months and have worked in a community to develop sustainable projects, possible sustainable projects, and then leaves, coming back a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, we want to try and see how can we ensure that the communities are, one, able to carry on with the project that they have envisioned and implemented through various resources, but also how do we ensure continued partnership after the exit between us as an organization and the communities? And then on a broader aspect, how do we ensure continued partnership beyond exit with government and local communities? That would be your district commissioners, your CBOs, and so on. So I just wanted to find out from that first theme, transitional or transformational partnerships, have there been any examples around the world where governments have actually continued to partner with communities after exiting from, implementing a project?
Sure, thanks very much. I don't think we have cases that look at exactly situations like that with community volunteers coming in and out. But I think what I can say is that our evidence suggests that something that's really important for community ownership is involvement in the planning processes from the very beginning. And again, it's really difficult to say without knowing your context. But I think we've seen communities say things like, oh, the internationals, they come in, they implement their projects, and then they leave. There was no engagement, there was no process of collaboration to determine what our needs were, and so in terms of sustainability, there's often not a bridge beyond the 2-year or 3-year or 5-year project cycle. And I think what I can say is that involvement from the very beginning is what we've seen as absolutely critical to continued partnership beyond the end of a 2-year volunteer stint or a 5-year project. That collaboration at every point, including in many cases in determining actually what the project or intervention activities are. So that may not have directly answered your question, Arthur, but let me know if there's anything else we can say. Also, Grace?
No, I think it's good. Yeah. No, I've nothing to add at this time.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can I attempt to respond to his question?
Even better.
Yes, that would be great.
I think he's right that there is a gap in that sense. But my suggestion would be a collaboration from the word go with, I would say, local bigger NGOs that would then be roped in during the process of the process of implementation, and then remain as, they could be able to foresee for at least a year or so with a proper arrangement from the word go, so that they get the support. Otherwise, the challenge is that the volunteers come in 1 year, there's a lot of rapid work very quickly because they also have to want to do something within a year, and then they are gone without really proper strategies put to continue. So the linkage, I think the main problem we have is the partnerships. We don't, when we go into the ground, can we find someone who has been there before and find out how they can remain as a link between us and the local community as we train them, as we grow them into becoming sustainable.
Very good, Consolata. Thank you. Any other questions? If not,
I have a question. Isabel, I have a question about how this ends up being actually operationalized inside of our organizations like USAID. Like, what does that actually look like? Because I work in Haiti, and the examples of community-led anything we have are not great. I'm sure everybody here has similar stories, but I'm just curious how this actually gets operationalized inside of organizations that are as big as USAID.
Yeah, thank you, and it's a really good question. I mean, we have this.
That's why you did this project, right? Yeah, to transform that issue.
And I mean, better than everybody how difficult it is to move a large bureaucracy, especially USAID. But I think we've seen a couple of really interesting entry points, and we've created some specific tools and resources targeted at USAID specifically to try to use some of those entry points. I can point to, I'm just flipping through the slides here. One example is the illustrative procurement language for USAID missions tool. So we have some of these lessons learned that Grace and I have been talking about. And the intent of this illustrative procurement language tool is to put some of that into USAID language that's incorporated into solicitations and ultimately grants and contracts with INGOs and contractors. So we're looking for sort of mandates, in a way, that can push traditional contracting and grant partners to use the sorts of collaborative partnership ideas that we've been talking about and to encourage good practices around responsible transitions in the actual context of a signed agreement or contract.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, John?
In your case studies, did you find examples of projects where the theory of change evolved right from the beginning of the project as they begin to learn the local community's needs and the local community's actors? Did the theories of change evolve at an early stage?
It's a good question. I think we've seen a couple cases where, especially with INGOs that have added like feedback loops into their processes, like how is feedback collected based on what people are saying, but like the actual intentional act of wanting to get feedback on how things are going, particularly in the chaos of transition processes. The one specifically that I'm thinking about is the Neuro Kenya case, where this is one of the few cases where it was very explicit that Neuro International was interested on collecting feedback and then using that feedback to adapt. And a quote that's really powerful from that case study is that there was permission to fail, right? Like the community, the local actors, the new entity had space to try things out, and if it didn't work, to try something else. And I think that came from the feedback process, but also the local entity, Neuro Kenya, the model for how it operated completely changed based on what the community said they wanted. And now it's a super successful in 14 different communities with this really incredible visionary leader. And I think a lot of that came from the act of asking what people wanted and giving them permission to just try, you know. And I think we've seen that in a couple cases, but the Kenya case is where it really stands out for me. And just speaks to the importance of feedback and adaptation. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have anything to add. But.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you guys bringing this in. Dying to see the case studies on the new website. And we'll your slide deck will go out to everyone. At the end of the day, we do an update with the recording of the whole show, the slide deck and everything, and it'll be on the website as well.
Perfect.
Can I do a quick final plug?
Sure, totally.
Yep. As Grace said earlier, our website goes live today. It's up, and we're going to be uploading those 20 case studies and those 20 plus tools and resources over the course of the next couple weeks. So really excited.
Yeah, and if you're interested in being a part of a mailing list, we have a sign-up sheet in person, but can also get the emails of who's been on this call, and we plan on emailing people as the packages start rolling out.
Okay. What is your website name?
It's up there.
Oh, okay.
Stoppingassuccess.org.
Oh, and one last plug. I will be leading a webinar tomorrow on DME for Peace, specifically on financial sustainability in stopping a success. So I'd encourage everybody that's interested.
And DME stands for?
Design, Monitoring, and Evaluation.
Aha, okay.
I would encourage everybody, if you're interested, to check out dmeforpeace.org and follow the links and sign up. That'll be really fun.
And thanks for listening. We appreciate you all sharing your time. Thanks, John.
Good. Absolutely, Grace. David, thank you both.
Thanks, John.
Okay, so I'm going to do what I did a moment ago. I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Stop. I'm going to jump to this screen and share
John,
it.
are we going to have, sorry, this is Annette. Are we going to have time for more questions later on?
Maybe.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that.
No problem.
Email us.
Yeah, you can email them. You'll have their emails, and we can continue the conversation.
I was thinking general questions, but I can take it offline.
Okay, very good. Okay, share. Great. So in a moment, up on your screen should appear the slide that would have gone with Mary Kate's plug. We our friends at the Global Fund for Community Foundations invented this awesome hashtag, and we use it everywhere. And many of you saw an announcement of another an event that's happening in London soon, referring to the Shift the Power movement. our movement is definitely part of the Shift the Power movement, as is this project that you just heard of. So I want to turn to Ann Hendricks-Jenkins, who is working with our regional coordinators to sort of facilitate calling on our various regional coordinators and hearing how things are going. So Ann, over to you.
Okay, thanks. And thanks so much for that excellent presentation. I look forward to those products and the case studies that are coming out. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about, and before I talk about the national chapters, I'm sorry, I'm going to put in a plug for something, which is the research working group. As you saw, I'm a co-chair of the research working group. We have an email platform, an email group. So if you're not in that group, for example, Isabel, who from Haiti, we would appreciate you participating in that group and perhaps sharing some of the research that you said that you've been working on, because it's the place where we look at community-led development from a research and evidence point of view. I've got some things I'm working on that are going to come out soon. We're going to have our next meeting in mid-February. And just as a little plug, one thing that has really emerged from some of our metasynthesis work is the idea that a realist approach often is a great way to look at community-led development. So I'll be sending out some stuff about a realist approach, and we'll be exploring that a little bit more. Okay, so that was Research Working Group. Thank you for that momentary interlude. And I will go back to the national chapters. So I spent a lot of time supporting our national chapters, because our national chapters are where everything we do takes its practical form. The global work that we do is all designed to support practical change in countries, and working at the national level and the subnational level. You can see this theory of change here, which is our sort of convergence theory of change for countries, where you have community-led development coming up from the bottom, and then national engagement and mobilization coming down from the top to enable large-scale community-led development. And some of you know that Indonesia is an example of how it can happen at a national level in a way that is really profound and meaningful. So what we're doing in the countries is a lot of the work of the national chapters focuses on that top prong, which is the national engagement and mobilization. And that's where the evidence and the voice of communities in each country should be informing policies and practices and resource allocation, particularly usually with regard to decentralization and devolution of power. And that's where it takes the large-scale approach and is able to have communities be able to interface with their governments at the local levels, as well as fostering a thriving civil society. Also, there's a lot of national level regulations and policies and advocacy needed around thriving civil society. So our regional coordinators are going to speak specifically in a minute, right after me, about what's happening, a few highlights from some national chapters and from the regional approaches. But you can see on this list that we have a lot of countries. Our last quarter of 2019 was a very busy quarter. Ethiopia really formed as a national chapter in the last quarter. Uganda and some other countries had a lot of activity that has set the stage for a busy 2019. So anybody who's on this call, if you are interested in getting involved in one of the national chapters or from a regional point of view, or you have colleagues or friends or peers that you think could really contribute at the national level in these countries, or if there's a country not on here that somebody is dying to get going on, we'd love to hear from you. So I will leave it at that, and I think we're going to move on to our regional coordinators and give them a chance to give us an update.
Great, Anne. So I'm just looking at who's online. I don't see Daisy. Daisy, are you online?
Oh, Daisy has a workshop all day today.
Okay. Tashome's online.
Yeah, I can speak for Daisy. With regards to Uganda, they had a big meeting in the last quarter of 2019. They have a big list of issues that they feel need to be addressed in Uganda. One of the challenges that they face is a huge amount of priorities, everything from working with youth to health issues to agriculture to governance. So they're in the process of trying to prioritize and pick the entry points for the integrated approach in Uganda. So Uganda is really going super well. And Kenya is also incredibly active. Daisy oversees Kenya. And then perhaps we can let Tishome say a few words if he would like to.
Yeah, good evening from my side. THP Ethiopia currently is engaged in the month of January on developing a strategy, how to go about community-led development, and how to go to align our strategies to the theory of change. This is mostly what we have done in this month, and I think I shared that document, and of course you may have read it. This is what I have for now.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that in Ethiopia due to the unique political and landscape there and the huge scale. You know, what happens in Ethiopia is going to be truly unique. I just want to say one other thing I forgot to say, which is that one thing that we're seeing in the research working group and in the national chapters is a call for community-led development evidence in each country, by each country, for each country. So Rollins will say a little bit about that more for Rwanda or for Malawi, but we definitely have a big focus this year on what it means to work in each country to define what community-led development should and will look like there in the unique context and the subnational context within each country. So maybe next we could go to Rollins.
Hello. I have a few points on the Southern Africa region. Specifically, I'll be speaking on Malawi and Zambia. First of all, is to introduce my colleague, Arthur, Country Director for COP Africa, who spoke earlier on. He has taken over the country lead for Malawi, the Malawi chapter, and Arthur is one of the most powerful and passionate people that I've ever met. The second point is in response to the growing call for country-based CLD vision and evidence, Malawi is taking a lead on this, and it is planning a learning session on how should CLD look like on the ground in practice. We will be bringing together donors, CLD practitioners, academicians from some of the investors in the country, as well as lived examples and other participants. The second point on that country-based CLD vision and evidence is that Malawi had meetings recently at USAID, and truly the question that is coming up there is what is the evidence to demonstrate added value of CLD compared to regular development approaches? And in response to that, Arthur had actually today a follow-up meeting with some USAID officials to continue that discussion and consider collaborative possibilities, perhaps linked to USAID's self-reliance learning agenda. The third point I would like to mention is one which John and Anne had earlier on mentioned. So after the launch in Zambia, now came the point of having those members join the emailing list, and congratulations to Zambia for having the highest number of people that have enrolled on the emailing list. Lastly but not least, within the SADC region, we are now in 2020, we are looking at Madagascar. So we are focusing on Madagascar, expansion into Madagascar, and we would like to open a chapter there. So we are currently scoping Madagascar, and anyone with leads on Madagascar on whom we should talk to, or who can be potential CLD local chapter in Madagascar, please send us those connections and connect us to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Roland. Go ahead, Anne.
So maybe we could hear from Sylvia or someone from THP movement and in LAC.
Diana or Sylvia?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is Diana. For us in the movement in the Mexican chapter, what we are having as a priority for this year is that we're going to launch and to start working with cluster knowledge labs for having we have three main strategies about launching learning sessions with the organizations from the movement, and also to start a survey for exchanging information about their experiences that we can use as a way to build and gather evidence. And we are designing the methodologies with this. And recently I talked to Gunjan for also understand what's going on with the metasynthesis and what are the tools or the knowledge that we can have for really strengthen our work here in the Mexican chapter. And what we want to do is to start talking with different stakeholders, not only CSOs or the organizations from the movement, but also with social movements, academics, business sector, international cooperation, and so on. So we'll be sharing the steps that we're taking and the evidence that we can gather for really for advocacy to CLD.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you, and thanks. I am really impressed with your super dynamic 2030 strategy as well that you guys have been working. Pascal, would you like to share a few words?
Well, and thank you. I will share 2 points. One, where we are now in terms of progress at the national chapter in Benin. We are now building our plan to share the priorities for 2020. I'll just mention that we plan to build partnership and alliance to strengthen the size of the CLD chapter with new platform members. And we have the database for the existing platform of civil society. And we have planned to meet with them to present the MCLD material and to invite them to join. And the second point is decentralization and leadership. And the main action we have agreed to carry out there are collecting documentation and good practices, including those for the epicenter strategy to be shared with local government officials and to support the capacity development for graduate young people and for all citizens interested. The third aspect we have already mentioned is citizen commitment and responsibility. With many stakeholders already identified, we have planned to continue the capacity development for trainers of trainees, targeting youth particularly and women. And the fourth aspect we have already we mentioned as well is learning and sharing from what is already available, taking advantage from the epicenter strategy. There we collect CLD material and make them available whenever needed, and grasping evidence through visits, studies, testimonies to inspire policy makers, particularly at the central government, to take action accordingly, and for practitioners to adopt and to replicate. And we have identified an area of global change in terms of programmatic thematic, including obviously women and youth voice and agency, climate change, security, and so on. At the regional level, I will mention that we are planning a meeting by end April, and that meeting will gather civil society regional representation in West Africa. And the purpose of that meeting is to give an opportunity to put the CLD in a regional agenda and to facilitate the connection between countries' CLD chapter and the co-conveners national offices in West Africa. And we are now discussing with all the regional representation in West Africa, and it's going on well. I could give a full update very briefly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's all from us.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Anne. That was great. Okay, I'm going to turn to Gunjan on the collaborative metasynthesis for an update on how this massive project, you guys think it was work to do 20 case studies. She's working with 400. Oh my God. So, but not alone. Another team, but no budget. Okay, Gunjan, over to you.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Grace and David. It was a brilliant presentation. The collaborative metasynthesis, we started, as most of you probably know, we started this last year, last March, and the idea was that what is the evidence telling us on the impact of community-led development, to get a sense of that, and an understanding of not just where, not just where is community-led development working and where do we see the impact, but why and how this impact is happening, and what are some ways to measure this. So this is, like John said, a huge collaborative exercise wherein we have 35 people from 23 different organizations who've been working on it. And as you may have heard in the December meeting announcements or for catch up, that in November, for the first time, we took some of the products that we had developed as part of this metasynthesis out, both to the larger movement, but also beyond to places like the American Evaluation Association, to the Global Partnership for Social Accountability at the World Bank, to get feedback and to also share some of the work that we've been doing. So we've got great feedback, and in fact, it continues to come in. Just recently, we heard back from Susan Wong, who heads the CDD division at the World Bank, and in fact, she was one of the first people to suggest to the movement that an exercise or a research like this is needed. So the next steps for us are really based on some of this feedback that we've been receiving. So what were the 3 products that we actually took out in November to the wider community? One was a scanning tool that we have developed. Now this tool is really we had a subgroup that identified 11 characteristics of community-led development and then worked between themselves to see how would these reflect in the life cycle of a program. And that's what the scanning tool was. And the idea of the tool was to help us develop the landscape of CLD programming currently, as it's being done based on the 325 studies that we have, that we are considering for this for this segment of the metasynthesis. So that was the first product. The second product that we had was an impact table. So what is it that we see or believe the impact of CLD to be? And what are some of the unintended impacts that we see? The impact subgroup had worked on it. And finally, we had a quality appraisal tool to help us, how do you judge the rigor and robustness of evaluations, irrespective of the methodology used, are there some commonalities in terms of questions that we can look at to test the rigor and robustness? So these were the 3 tools that we took out. We focused really on the scanning tool because that's the first part of our work, the landscape of CLD programming. We've received a lot of great feedback on the tool, which we will be refining the tool based on that feedback. In the meantime, we are almost done with the process of scanning the studies, applying the tool to the 325 studies. But here's what we do need help with. We are looking for a few volunteers to help us apply these tools to some of the studies that have come in. So it would be essentially 4 studies per person, but we do want to see how people who practice community-led development, how easy do they find the tool, what kind of results do they come up with when they use these tools on some of the studies, and to also check how your results match with my results when I use this tool, or some of the other people who've been trained to use the tool, how do the results kind of match up to test the robustness of the tool. So it's not a lot of time, it's just 4 studies. It would be a great way for you to become familiar with this tool, which is now being considered by different organizations, but it would also be a tremendous contribution to the metasynthesis. So if you're willing to volunteer, drop me an email. I will, at the end of the slide, put my email address into the message box. So the scanning is underway, but the other thing that we are going to do this year really is, as Anne and Roland's talked about, understanding what does CLD mean for different countries and for organizations in different countries, right? So the tool that we have right now is collaboratively developed. We had 12 organizations, people from 12 organizations working on it. We had a lot of other organizations contributing, but most of these were people from INGOs, all of us. And we do want to get the country perspective in. So this year we are planning sense-making workshops with different national chapters to see what do people think of the characteristics that have been identified, how do they see them in the life cycle of a program. The other thing that we are also doing is that we're actually looking at what does the literature say. So 2 of our great interns, Matthew and Claire, introduced themselves at the beginning of when we were doing introductions. They are helping us look at what the literature is saying in respect to these 11 characteristics and how they appear on community-led development. What we will have, in addition to the landscape of CLD programming, 2 other things we are looking at having by April: an impact visualization to help us create a program theory for CLD or hone what we already have. This will be based on the impact tool that the impact working group created, subgroup created. And we are looking at guidance on CLD documentation. This is something that came up during our interactions, but also as we read the reports, one thing that was very clear was that there is most reports, evaluation reports, there is nothing in them that tells us that this was a CLD program. So if we don't have the elements of community-led development captured in these reports, how are we ever going to look at contribution or attribution of community-led development towards impact? So one of the things that was suggested was that if we could come up with, based on this exercise, some guidance. So that will be coming out later this year. And then we are going to move to the actual evidence synthesis piece, which will be done by the evaluation subgroups. Now, I know we have a lot of new members joining in the last few months, and a lot of members who could not be a part of the initial subgroups but had expressed interest in joining. So the evaluation subgroup has now opened membership again to look at the second piece of the work, which is, the evidence synthesis piece and the realist synthesis. So if any monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning people on the call or your colleagues from your organizations would like to be involved, again, please either write to me or Matthew Cruz, who chairs the evaluation subgroup. Finally, what we are planning is that you keep hearing the term realist approach every time I think we do a brief on the metasynthesis, and Anne also touched upon this. This is not a new methodology. However, it's a methodology that we believe holds a lot of value for our work in community-led development and has not been used has been used very sporadically by organizations like World Vision. It is a methodology that helps us to understand exactly why, how, changes or impacts are taking place. Because this is something that we will be using for the meta-synthesis, we had planned an introductory workshop or seminar to the realist approach for the research team that has been engaged with the meta-synthesis. But if anybody would like to be a part of it to understand what is this approach, how they can use it in their organizations, you're welcome to join in. It will be conducted by Dr. Jill Westhoff, who is the world's leading expert in realist methodology. She's also on our advisory group for the meta-synthesis research. She's based out of Australia, and it's 3 a.m. there right now. So she will not be able to do it on our usual call timings. So it'll be around 4 p.m. EST when we do that workshop. But if you're interested, again, drop me an email and we will make sure that you get to know when the workshop is happening. So yeah, and finally, the evaluation group, which is different from the evaluation subgroup here. Sorry about the confusion that you saw in the slide that John had put up about memberships. The evaluation group is a platform that we have created within the movement, essentially for all the people who have been involved with the meta-synthesis, either directly as the research team or have submitted, studies for the meta-synthesis, have volunteered with it, or would like to be kept posted on what is happening with the meta-synthesis, but also what are the different kind of evaluation methodologies that that we are adapting, the different tools that we are creating, how it can be applied, using it in their organizations. So that's the platform for it. That's the evaluation group that you saw, and we have very recently opened it up. It was initially restricted to people from the meta-synthesis, and then we opened it up to essentially anybody who wants to be engaged with this meta-synthesis and evaluation methods and evidence on CLD. So it's now open. You're welcome to join in. Yeah, I think that's it from my side. If anybody has any questions, feel free to get in touch.
Great. And that's, the conversation in all of these areas is really what the groups.io subgroups are all about. Any, people who join them, the announcements group that everybody is a part of is the only one that's rigorously moderated, but all the rest are open conversation spaces. So I don't think, let's see, nope, Sam was unavailable. So Sam Wolfius from American has offered to chair a new humanitarian development nexus working group, because there are lots of people in our movement who are really focused in the humanitarian response universe of activities, but are standing, as Search for Common Ground and Peace Direct and other groups do, they are standing in a recognition that it's the people themselves, people who sometimes are seen as victims, are really the change agents. And following the Humanitarian Summit of 2016, there was an international commitment to really localize humanitarian response, really invest in local actors and the people themselves to take on this. This little picture is a school started by refugees in Uganda. I really liked it. So, so go to the Community-Led Dev website, sign up for this one if you're interested. It should be, you'll be getting a notice from that subgroup on the timings of some initial planning discussions, but it's one that we really want to get off the ground in the next few months. So finally, I violated
John,
yeah?
sorry, this is Sia. Before you go on to the next meetings, could Matt and I just say a little bit about the learning working group?
Please do.
Thank you so much.
You
Matt
don't have
and
a mail group yet, right? Go ahead.
No, we don't. We actually talked about it and thought it would be most useful to keep the learning working group on the larger group site, because we want the sessions, which will be 2 or 3 a year, to really be accessible to as many people as possible. So we are planning the next learning working group session is planned for our monthly call in March, which I believe is March 25th. Is that right, John?
That's correct, yes.
Great. And that will be soon after CSW. I believe it's the week after CSW. And as John mentioned, this year is a critical year because of Beijing Plus 25. And so we'd like to focus that session on basically understanding how our work links to Beijing Plus 25 and the Decade of Action, particularly SDG 5, but also targets within other SDGs that are related to gender equality, to learn about opportunities for action throughout the year, as well as opportunities for collaboration. So currently, we have planned a session that will include an overview of opportunities for action related to Beijing Plus 25. Geeta Rao Gupta, who is our executive director at the 3D Program for Girls and Women and a senior fellow at the UN Foundation, has agreed to speak about sort of the series of events and what the opportunities for action, particularly for civil society organizations, are around gender equality and advancing the SDGs. Targets related to gender equality. But Matt and I are really keen to have MCLD members and chapters participate in the session as well. And so we are looking for at least 2 chapters or organizations who would be willing to present on how you are addressing gender-related barriers and inequalities, the strategies that you're using to address gender norms, where you're seeing progress, what are the challenges that you're coming up against, and what are the opportunities for sort of sharing and developing opportunities for collaboration. So we will, as always, it's never enough time. We're asking for organizations that would be willing to present for 10 to 15 minutes. We'll have some guided questions. I will put my email address in the group chat. So if you are ready and willing to present on your work in gender equality, we'd really welcome that. We do have a couple of months before then, so we do have time to have further discussions. But please let Matt or I know if you have any questions. Matt, would you have anything to add?
Nothing to add. You summed it up perfectly, Sia. And yeah, again, just to reinforce, would love engagement for those interested, and we can also, we'll follow up with a notice in the right channel with some more information, so it also goes out to the rest of the network here.
Great, thanks a lot.
I'll just include your contact information in the update that goes out with the recording and the slide deck and everything.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sia. So here are the next coming events. I am heading this Saturday to Geneva. A number of lots of civil society groups are attending the executive board meeting of the WHO. Matthew and Claire have been collecting a huge literature on CLD and universal health care. And there was no such, the whole phrase community-led development didn't exist before 2012, and now there's a big literature. Also, the word realist evaluation seems to appear in every one of them. So having that workshop on realist evaluation will be really useful. The African Union Summit, now referred to as the African Union Assembly, is happening very soon. I don't know if our African colleagues are in touch with the non-state actors groups that are participating there. As MK mentioned, the CSOC-D is coming up in CSW. Our next global call, like all of them, will be the last Wednesday of February. I'm giving a lecture at the Swaminathan Institute in Chennai on community-led development on the 11th of March. So you'll all see these things when you get them, but there's just a huge number of opportunities we have to raise the profile of this agenda and really engage with policymakers at the global level, as well as at the district level, the county level, the national level, all of that, having them in co-creation for these goals, which are our goals are fully integral with the Sustainable Development Goals, and folks should be engaging with them seriously. So, but that'll be up to us, right? So we'll be doing that. And with that, we're going to end this call. As I mentioned, you'll get an update, a recording, the slide deck, and everything will be on the website, and the contacts for follow-up with Grace and David and Sia and Anne and Gunjan and Matt. So with that, I thank you all for joining, and have a great week. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank